Entonces, bienvenido a Conexiones Culturales y Espirituales con la Conservación. Y vamos a tener una presentación con 4.
Today we're going to have a presentation with 4 people. Ulum Pixan. She is a clan mother. Gloria Ramirez. A daughter, she's a tribal doctor. Nicole Brackington. She is a moon spirit. And she is a practice ceremonies and works in the community. Rosa Blumenfeld. She created Reclaiming Indigeneity, and she's a mentor. Before we start, I have to give some announcements. Like you all know, this training is being done in lands that was inhabited before in tribes by indigenous, and it was colonized by European people. Please take a moment to find your location on this map and take a moment to kind of honor those communities that were occupied and those people that were here before us. And here, how can we make racial equity, have a racial equity in our world? As you all know, this town is configured to for participants. If you want to talk, please unmute your icon at the bottom. Everybody will be silent at one point or at the beginning. So if you're not talking, you need to on silence. You can use the chat to make comments or to even pose any questions. A person who is me will be looking at the chat periodically during the session to make sure that everything is set. And we will have time at the end to go over chat questions. And please have in mind that this session is being recorded. We want to thank our sponsors. They have supported this training. Also, silver sponsors. These are the silver sponsors. And we also have an ongoing option. This is over here, this site on the chat. I'm gonna put it on the chat so you can go in and see our option. It's a live option online. And these are our providers, virtual providers that we have. Please take a moment to look at them and also take a time to go to our online presentations as well. Then, thank you for coming and attending this training, and let's start.
Muy contentos de verles y
I want to first thank to our ancestors and elders, those that we see and those that we don't see as well. I want to thank them. I want to start I'm going to share. Going to share my or open my screen so we can hear from everybody that is here present today. Okay. First, I want to recognize Pocasset Coconut Land Trust. I want to also give thanks to the Indigenous People Network and also NOFA for letting us use this online space that we have right now. The name of the conference is the Summer Conference NOFA 2021. We're going to start listening to Gloria. Gloria was born. She was born on September 25th on the Mayan territory. That is now a colonized territory, El Salvador. Unaku. The earth moves. The earth moves. We are moving rhythmically, but we're moving. Mother Earth is alive. This is possible. Thanks to the cosmic energy distributed all over the universe, that it makes it vibrate. The earth moves. We are in constant movement. And that is part of everything, even including humans, that we are small thread. And within this beautiful human thread. In the past, our ancestors, they talk about future hunger and future things and how Mother Earth was going to be destroyed. And we're seeing that now. We're living it. This is a reality. Our culture of respect, knowledge, they were substituted by a cultural terror of forgetfulness. The earth moves. Everything moves. And our ancestors, our grandparents, the colonization, they changed their beliefs using terrors. I want to talk about how they substituted how they started substituting with the Gregorian calendar, which is a mechanical thing. That's how they started. It was named after their name, Gregorio. And it was supported by people in that time that were ignorant of the land, of the planet consciousness. What happened? Because of this big mistake. little by little, we started forgetting, because we have forget even what we don't know that we forgot. We have forgotten what we even don't remember that we've forgotten. Because we live immersed in our daily lives, so we don't know. And I continue saying it. This is something that we got from the colonization. They talk about changing to new times of harmony, respect, equilibrium. In that time, Mother Earth was recognized. Only if we recognize Mother Earth, if we don't respect what we eat, everything that we eat, everything that Mother Earth gave you, that you eat, that you have, is coming from the land, from Mother Earth. She never negates anything to us. And because of that, we need to recognize her as our mother, as our life giver. Everything, all the learnings, the teaching. We have a lot of information, manuscripts, and when the colonization came with all those teachings and all that, they burned those transcripts. Our elders, they were not recognized because of this. But what they did, they left their teachings, their knowledge, they left a mark on stone. They marked it. And all of their knowledge is marked here. Like this. I want to talk, this is a Mayan calendar. I want to talk about it. This is the Mayan calendar. Again, of course, this is a replica. This is a duplicate of it, but it's based on that. This calendar is alive. It's alive. This was made with the observation of the planetary movement. That's how this was created. This calendar is perfect. It is based on the studying of everything. This is, here you can see all the knowledge since the beginning of the creation. You can see this with all the creation in life. This calendar was made with knowledge. In this calendar, it has everything. It has the planet, the moon, the sun. All of this, we understand that it lives in a force, energy force. This calendar has the period of 9 months. And if you see the gestation, women gestation is 9 months. So many strokes, so many things. You could have like 7.5, 7 months and all that, but the gestation is 9 months. And then on this, the 20 energies of gestation, the energies goes around it as well. These have specific characteristics that they rule the human. for instance, everything is in its place. The moon is here, the planet is here. In the moment that one planet translates to another, the energy moves. And then, can Gloria go slow? These characteristics, they describe the human being. Each of these one, they have an agual. They call it an agual. And it has a spirit, physical spirit. And this skin has the same composition of the 20 amino acids that rule the genetic composition that all human, no human, but alive, things alive on the world have it. We are talking about science, life science, creation. We are talking about something that we have inside our composition, our DNA. We are planetarian. The aguales is a physical influence. They have the same composition as the 20 amino acids, and this is the same as they have that it rules the genetic composition of all the living things in the world. All this is to explain that the energetic composition between energy and that all the limitations that a person brings when they are born is written by what they bring when they come in. Let's say within the calendar Mayan, within the Mayan calendar, within the 28 days, it has also aligned with the movement on the sun, how long it takes the sun to move. Also, women. The woman has a 28 cycle to give life. It is interesting also to observe the shell, the total shell in regards to the Mayan calendar. Since it is formed by 13 marks, because within all those you can see all this the history of the creation. And we all know indigenous. And we all know indigenous people, we all know that the true name of Earth is Turtle Island. Each person as a life is alive can calculate, can find out their Nagual. You may think that you are the way you are just because I am that way, but it's very important to know what our life mission is when we came in here. What really the most important thing is that this message is given. You have listened, you have received my message. Thank you, Gloria, for your presentation.
applauding.
Oh, era un aplauso. Era un aplauso.
Oh, thank you.
Gracias,
That's it.
Rosa. Vamos a seguir y voy a presentar la persona bien.
I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Who is Nicole? She is the spirit of the moon, indigenous, elder, multiracial elder, multi-generational and multicultural. Her ancestors are African, Native American, Barbadian, Cape Verdean, Irish, Scottish. I'm leaving you with Nicole.
Nicole, you muted.
Can you hear me now? Great. So good afternoon, everyone. I want to start first by doing a smudge, which is a traditional thing we do to kind of set the mood and the tempo for what we're doing. And I know we're on Zoom, but I've been doing many Zooms in our spiritual circles, and this smudge carries because it's about spirit. So I'm just going to send that your way and hope that you receive it in a good way. And it's just about balancing and cleansing and setting a nice clean palette for what we're going to talk about and to receive what's yours to receive. So originally, this space and this sharing was going to be done by my elder, Leonard Dayrider. Leonard is an elder, a mentor, and a Sundance keeper in Alberta, Canada, on the Blood Reserve, the Blackfoot Reserve Blood Band. And I was really hoping to have him speak and share because he's been one of my greatest teachers in this walk on this red road. And unfortunately, which I'll talk about later in the latest piece, he's had some losses that have really made it hard for him to be in public and kind of do his sharing in a good way. So, and I wasn't going to speak for him, but I had some other elders really share with me that when someone is in mourning or in sickness, what we do is we do for them without asking them what they need or burdening them with trying to figure out what they need. If we see that there's a need that they have, we just step up and do it. That's part of the mourning process. And so I was encouraged to step up and speak for him in this place, not necessarily for him, but in this place of him. And so that's what I've come to do. And I thought I was going to speak on kind of my diaspora of where I've come from, being a mixed race, multicultural person, always having a foot in two worlds. That's how my entire life has been, even in my own family, because my mother's side is the more indigenous European mix of people. My father's side is the very African and Caribbean mix of people. And that's how I come together. And so there's always, my foot is in one space and then usually the opposing space or the opposite space. So it's been a very interesting journey. But as I prayed on this and thought about it, what came to me, because the question really is about the land and how we connect to the land as indigenous peoples and how we are to conserve her and get her back to a place where she's happy with us and we're happy with her. And so that led me to back to Leonard. And back to Leonard specifically because Leonard, on his land in Alberta, Canada, holds his Sundance. And his Sundance is on a farm. It's called Farm 4, his farm. And as I was thinking about that, and I had this dream of just being there in the arbor and on the land, and it's this really amazing place where there's just this butte on his land that just stands all by itself. And on that is where they put the arbor, and on that is where we dance. And so you can see for hundreds of miles from that butte. You can see weather coming in that takes hours to get to you. And it's just this amazing, magical place that we get to come together and do this dancing. And even when we come back year after year to do it, it's always this greeting of big hugs and love and welcome home to that place. And I always felt that even before I met anybody there. Once I landed on that land did like that. It just grabbed my feet and pulled me as I walked. So I don't think that that's just me. I think it is that land. I think it is that energy. I think it is that connection as Indigenous people that we come to these places. My history is that I also have Blackfoot in me. My grandmother always told these stories of our Blackfoot ancestor. But on the East Coast, it's really hard to reconcile how Blackfoot got there, but actually it's not, because we had residential schools. And they removed those children as far away as they could get them from home. So we have residential schools and the remnants of residential schools and the pass through to other places because those children were removed to the East Coast. And so, but I was always intrigued by that. And it's a long story as to how I got there, but I got there. And so when we come to that land and we dance, and I've been to many, many Sundances, and I realized that every Sundance I've been on has been on a farm, every single one, whether in Canada or in the States. And it's always this place of on the farm where the farm is right on the edge of the wild. And that's where the ant dance happens to be. And then we go into the wild and we collect what we need for that dance. And everything we need is on that land that we bring back to that dance. And the connection of putting tobacco down and collecting our sage ourselves and being in the grass and the bugs and all of that, and the beauty of just taking it for yourself and bringing it back and doing ceremony with it is part of that sensibility that Native people have, even though many of us have been, urbanized in a lot of ways, even on the reservation, separated from those practices. They're still there. It still hasn't been long enough of a separation for that to be lost. And so when we are on the land and we're thinking about what it means to be of the land and means to be practicing ancient ceremonies directly connected to the land. When we Sundance, we go and we take a tree and it becomes our center of everything we do there. And the tree is described as an umbilical cord, direct connection to Creator. And that's why we dance around that tree. Because that tree lives, even when it offers itself. Let me correct myself. We don't take it. That tree offers itself. That's a teaching that comes through our Indigenous elders across the board. When we took animals, those animals gave themselves to us. We didn't take them forcibly. There was a relationship. There was a conversation that was had in spirit that they offered themselves to us. The plant's the same. The water's the same. And we were in right relationship with them so we could use them. We could use their bodies for our nourishment, knowing that one day they would be nourished by our bodies. Those bugs when we go, those birds when we go. We had these things out west called sky burials, where they just put you either in a tree or up high in a loft, and you were offered to nature to be that food, that sustenance for them, because that's the reciprocity of the agreement. You give the animals, the plants give themselves to us, we give ourselves back to them and to Mother Earth, and that cycle continues. And so when we dance, and we dance in that circle, it's a representation of that. It's a representation of how we move around in the circle, around the earth, all in good ways. Ceremony Sundance has become a thing that was considered taboo to talk about for a long, long time because of colonization, because many of the ceremonies were outlawed outright, but we didn't stop practicing. They became underground things that were done. And then when they came back out into the light, we were still concerned. We didn't trust, nor should we, that they wouldn't do that again. And so they became very taboo to talk about because of the nature of having to protect what we had left. And so now there is a definite turn where Native people, especially Native elders, who are going quickly, by the way. So if you get to spend time with an elder, please do. But those elders are telling us that these things were never meant to be kept secret. It was by necessity that they were kept secret, and we need to now share them out because the elders are going, and when they go, they take with them that knowledge. And if it's secret, how do we know what to do next? How do we know how to step in a good way? How do we know how to come back and rescue that land and that spirit and that community that we are sorely missing, so out of balance from? And so Leonard talks about this in a great deal. If you ask Leonard a question, he can talk for hours and give you so much in those things. So I hope that in the future we'll get to have Leonard and speak to him and hear from him, because he is a unique individual. He's another one that always has a foot in two worlds, even though he is a full-blood Blackfoot, which is also very unusual. Not many full-blood people in indigenous community in North America anymore. And so when I think about what it is that we need to do to bring back that conservation piece, that energy piece about how we are on the land and what we do to re-indigenize our thinking, re-indigenize our way of being, we have all these examples. If you can sit and hear the stories, because that's where the wisdom is kept, in the stories, and that's how the wisdom is passed, by the stories. And so, for example, they have in Blackfoot country this character in so many of their traditions and their legends called Napi. And Napi is this character that sometimes he's a god and he's going and having these adventures, and sometimes he's a trickster, and sometimes he's a hero and a villain in the same story. He will turn, but Napi has all these adventures about how to be a human being. They're always about this challenge that comes up, and Napi's in the middle of it. And sometimes Napi will go and he'll teach the people how to do this thing. And sometimes Napi will go and be the problem, and the people have to do something to deal with Napi. But it's always this lesson of this: when this happens, this is how you could go, but this is how you should go. There's always that dynamic. Even so much so that, and also it's not a made up storytelling. These are real things told in a stylized way, maybe, but real things, because there's one story of Napi where he goes on all these adventures because the buffalo have left the land, and the buffalo were everything, the source of everything in the plains. And they left for like 1,000 years. And Napi went on this adventure to find out where the buffalo went, and the buffalo had left because of mistreatment, and they went off somewhere else. And there's this whole story about this spirit family that has them captured. And Napi goes, and eventually Napi rescues the buffalo and brings the buffalo back to the people, but it takes him 1,000 years to do that. And so in the actual archaeological record that they have, because that whole area is being under archaeological digs because of the buffalo jumps and things like that, they found a period in the archaeological record where there was 1,000 years where they did not hunt buffalo. There were no buffalo to hunt. And so that speaks, and it was thousands of years ago. So this is not a new creation. This story came from an actual event that happened in chronological time that they then told in story form. So you would understand that they could go away, but they could come back. And what you want to do is make sure that you make it a space and a place where they can come back and they want to be there. And your relationship to those buffalo, to whatever it is that the story is telling, is you're the crux of the matter. Human beings are the crux of the matter. And so all those stories tell that. So I really think it's really important to get into those stories and to hear those stories and then hear elders tell them, because they always share too what the possibilities are in their own lives or how it showed up in their own lives. So it becomes practical knowledge. And just the ideals. There are ideals in Native community that are just speak directly to conservation. Things like take only what you need. Don't take as much as you can take. Take what you need. Or to use everything that you take. If you're going to take it, use everything of it. Or if you have some left over, then give it to someone else. Don't just, because it's a very much of a gather and use and gather again and use and gather again and use, so that you can react to what's happening in the world and the environment and the lands and the animals. And so, and sharing in particular. Community is about, if I'm not okay, you're not okay. Good, healthy community. And so Native people were always about, if they saw someone else in need, you give. And if they see you in need, they'll give. It was unspoken courtesy, unspoken support, unspoken care of the whole, of all the people. And that carries over to the land because Mother Earth is us. We seem to have decided we're not going to remember that Mother Earth is another living being in the mix. And what we do to her, we do to ourselves. And what we do to her affects our children, which is worse. That's why the whole, speaking of 7 generations, that we have to be good and caring about what we're doing 7 generations out from us, because those are our children. That's what we're leaving to them. And it's important to have long-lasting relationship with all of these things. And I think finally, I would like to say, for Indigenous people right now, because it's been so much down pressure, so much intentional invisibility put on Indigenous people to say that they're not here anymore or they don't count anymore. And that, too bad, so sad. We took the land, it's over, so get over it. Those kind of thinkings and actions, or how disposable they want to make Indigenous people and Black people and people of color in general, but because we're talking about Indigenous ideals right now, I want to really focus on that, because there is a prophecy, a 7-fire prophecy, that says when we come to this breaking place and we come to this place where there's a mixture of all these races together, what will happen is that we have to then come together if we want to survive what's coming next. And we have a choice. There's a fork in the road. And we either choose to come together and work together, or we stay separate and perish. There's A or B. And that prophecy speaks of that when we do come together, if we choose to come together, then we should go to the elders, the people who are of the land, the indigenous native people, and find out how to be on that land again. But we have to be careful because many of those elders have forgotten how to be themselves. So we have to be really wise and careful about how we choose who to follow or who to listen to, because they've been colonized too. They have been separated from their spiritual purity, if I can use that word too. So I think it's really important that we, as we remember who we are, that we reach back for those ancestors and find them as good a way as we can. And this is one of the places where I think this could really happen, where good people who are already doing good work and already caring and nurturing and feeding us and clothing us and educating us come together to share where we're coming from all the places that we come from. But we're on this land, and those people from this land are the ones who are closest to how to be well with this land. And so we need to lift them up. We need to lift them up. We need to support them. We need to eliminate the divisions that have been put in place to keep us separate and powerless, and reach back and get those teachings and get those ways of being and get those conservation practices that are universal, and start there. And so I think that's all I have. And I hope that really did speak to the question at hand. Thank you. All my relations. Omitakuyasin.
Vamos a continuar. Yo voy a poner unas fotografías que Nicole compartió de
Of Leonard. And Nicole is gonna let us know where the pictures are from and what the pictures is showing.
So this is, that's Leonard. Grandfather Owl Talks. And even his name, Out West Owl, is not necessarily a name that's usually given to people, because the owl comes for them when someone's going to die or someone's going to cross over. It's a signal that something's happening, some spirit is going to cross over. So it's not really a popular name out there. So East Coast, we have a little bit different definition and interpretation of owl medicine, but that's his name. There's a story behind why that's his name, but yeah. And this little blurb, I love this little blurb, because at the end where it talks about, where he says how honesty, responsibility, respect, and trust are essential. Well, that's exactly right. That's the conservation piece for everything. Honesty, responsibility, respect, and trust. This is the Sundance Arbor I was telling you about. So you can't see it in the background, but way back there, the darkness is the Rocky Mountains. And so when it's clear and beautiful, it's just amazing. It's an amazing space to be in. And this is where we dance. You see that little tree there is our Sundance tree, and the arbor is around it. And the teepees are where we stay, because we dance for 4 days and we fast and pray. Mm-hmm. This is Jesse. This is Leonard's son, Jesse. Leonard over on the left-hand side, speaking after the dance. We have a giveaway after the dance, which is another form of that sharing and community, where we give thanks by giving things to people in the community. And a whole community comes. Before and after dance, we have a feast and we do a giveaway for the community. And this is his son in profile, Jesse. And I'll talk more about Jesse later when we come back to Leonard. Thank you.
Razones por las que a veces actuamos como actuamos, pero
sometimes we act the way we act, and but I'm going to introduce Rosa. She's like a sister, a friend, a partner of a past partner, friend, sister. I think Rosa is still in Canada. During the pandemic, she stayed trapped over there. We have been able to communicate throughout this time. I'm going to put her picture. And then later she's going to tell us a little bit about herself. Then this is Rosa. She has a program that is named Returning Home, Regresando a Casa. She's a mixed woman, indigenous. She's from the Muisca people. She was raised outside her traditions of her land. She grew up in Vancouver, Canada. Well, I'm gonna let her share her story. Welcome. We love you.
A very generous introduction, Ulum. I love you too. I just want to thank Gloria and Nicole for their presentations. I was really moved and touched. And I think, it's for me, so I'm from the Muisca people. So our traditional lands are Bogotá, today known as Bogotá in Colombia, and the provinces of Santander and Boyacá, north of the capital. And our elders say that what happened to our people is we were buried by cement. Bogotá is now a huge city of 9 million people. And for me, I wasn't raised, listening to elders or even using the word indigenous in our house at all. And that's kind of become the Colombian capitalist ways to forget where we came from. Even though sorry, that's my dog, she's having a little cough. My grandmother was indigenous, and she was the first one in our family to leave our traditional ways of life and raise her children as Colombian. And so the work that I do now is trying to figure out, there are so many elders like Gloria who talk about the right way, who talk about what it means to be in harmony with the earth. And so for people like me, I'm trying to figure out, what does that mean to listen to that teaching and to put it into practice in my life, since I was raised within capitalism. And so as I've kept listening, I've come across, various elders who have kind of a little more detail and have given me a map about how you do this kind of work. And when I first started doing it, it was really hard. There's a feeling of like, this is really far away. It doesn't belong to me. I don't know if I'm allowed to reclaim it. And people have a lot of different feelings about about that. And it was a lot to kind of work through for me. And COVID, you know, right before COVID happened, I was a bartender in Boston, and COVID really forced me to like slow down and really listen about, you know, what is my purpose and what do I, and it led me back, you know, doing water ceremonies really kind of was a big part of my journey of like coming home. And I just kept listening to all this water that was around me that I would just find everywhere that I went. And it just kept telling me, just keep coming home and putting people in my life that helped me think about, you know, how do I share this map that I've been so grateful to receive of this work and share it with other people who are like me. And there are really no good words to describe it. But I think the best that I've found is this term called native raised other. And it's basically a really honest way to say, yes, of course I'm Indigenous, I'm part of the Muisca people, because the oppression makes these identities subtractive, meaning that it's easy to take away from us. And that's what the oppression tries to do, is take us away from our identities, from our people, from our heart, from our land. And so if I'm going to come home, then I always have to be Indigenous first. But I don't want to be dishonest or paint a picture of somebody who I'm not. And so the raised other piece is really helpful, because it's an honest way to say, yeah, I was raised outside of my traditions, within capitalism, and within other communities, but I still am who I am. And so what does that mean for kind of reclaiming that indigeneity? It means that honest conversation and assessment with myself about, you know, what are the behaviors that I have that I've learned from capitalism that I need to unlearn, and how do I share that with people who have a similar story to mine, and not putting the burden of that teaching on people who are native raised native, which is you know, people who are Indigenous or Native who are raised within their own communities and within their own traditions. And so how do I do this process slowly, with integrity, and with honesty, so that so one of the things that I tell my students, for example, is that if we're going to come home to our identities, to our indigeneity, then there are some things that we can't do anymore. Like we can't drink alcohol. Alcohol has been such a tool of colonization, and we can't participate in it. And the other thing that I tell my students is, like, there's a lot of layers of identity that are on top of our Indigenous layer that have been forced on us through colonization and capitalism. And basically what all those other layers of identity do is smush down our Indigenous one. And the purpose of being raised outside, you know, just like with residential schools, is kill the Indian, save the man. And so there's no shame in being raised outside of our traditions and being raised other. It just is. It's what happened to us. It's what happened to me. And, you know, my family and my ancestors, they made all the decisions, the best decisions that they could to survive the genocide coming at them. You know, the Muisca people were the largest tribe in Colombia, what's now known as Colombia, before contact. And within 50 years, the conquistadors killed about 2.5 million people. And we were a tribe of about 4 or 5 million are the estimates. And so that leaves an impact, an impact of fear that is passed down through the generations. And so there's a reason that my ancestors decided that they were going to live outside of the traditions, and that they were going to speak Spanish, that they were going to become Catholic, and that they were going to say we are Colombian now, and not and forget our roots and where we came from. And I'm the only one in my family who's interested in our history. I'm like the weird one at gatherings who wants to talk about my grandmother. And everybody else is like, let's just drink and dance salsa. And I'm kind of like, that's great. And there's work to do here. There's a lot of work to do. And it's not easy, you know, but I think the water and land have really taught me so much about how to come home in my spirit. And when I first started taking walks in the woods, I needed to have like earphones in, and I needed the distraction from my racing and anxious thoughts. And over time, that's, you know, the more that I immerse in water, the more that I kind of do this work and slow down. And, you know, where I really took the time during COVID because I had to, I was out of work, to just kind of slow down, the more I was able to come home to myself and my heart. And that has been such a gift for me that I really feel like it's my purpose to share with others. And so the word that I use is native raised Latinx, but, you know, it's an imperfect word. There are people in the Caribbean who identify as Afro-Latino and think Latinidad does not encompass their identity. There are Chicanos in you know, Mexico and New Mexico in the Southwest who feel like the word Latinx is very disrespectful. And the reason that these words don't fit is because they're not our words as Indigenous people. And they're never going to fit because they're colonizer words. But I have to find people somehow and tell my story somehow. And so these are the compromises that I make in terms of trying to find people and share this knowledge with them. So that's why, you know, just a few months ago, I started Reclaiming Indigeneity. And I think, you know, for me, being raised, you know, Colombian here in Canada, in the Jewish community, there's a lot of layers there on top of the Indigenous one. And my dream eventually is to have like a whole team of trainers from, you know, who were raised other and with lots of different stories, who were raised Black, who were raised Asian, who can talk about the impact using this theory that I've gotten from Indigenous and Native elders to apply to their stories and to do their own coming home work and lead other groups of people. But for now, since I've just started, I'm starting with, you know, my kind of home team, the people that I know the most about. So it's, and so the, you know, the water ceremonies that I do aren't like Indigenous from Turtle Island. They're Jewish water ceremonies called mikvah. And in Jewish tradition, it's more important to build a mikvah than it is to build a synagogue. And there are archaeological remains of mikvahs that are thousands of years old. And it's a very old ceremony that we've used, you know, and that has survived to this day. And I've had a lot of struggles with Jewish community over the years because it has become part of those layers of colonization for me. But being in water and using this water ceremony has helped me heal a lot, and has really been part of the kind of guiding force to that has helped me come home to my Muisca identity. And it turns out that there's a reason that I'm so attracted to water, and it's because a lot of our stories and traditions as Muisca people come from water, and Lake Guatavita is like our sacred lake, and there's a whole bunch of sacred lakes around it on our land in Colombia that are very important to us. So this work of coming home, you know, I think is directly tied to land and conservation, even though it may seem like it's a meandering stream, we always kind of get there. So thanks for listening to me, and I'm so honored and grateful to be part of this panel.
Yeah, I can just share really briefly because I kind of touched on Leonard quite a bit already. But when I was speaking, I spoke of how Leonard is not necessarily in a place in his head to come and have these conversations, even though he wanted to. Like, this was not this was his idea and his intention to share his teachings out. He's a bit of a revolutionary in that factor, and it's not always easy. He gets pushback in the community for sharing out what he shares, but it was shared to him because Leonard himself was a abductee to residential schools, and he was taken at 4 years old, and he was there in the residential schools for 10 years till he ran away, and eventually worked his way back to the Blackfoot reservation, to the Blood reservation. But the thing was that when he got there, while he was welcomed back as one of their children, he was not welcomed back into some of the traditional places and ceremonies and things like that, because he had basically missed out on the process that they had in place, which is kind of this thing of that they take the children early and they start to teach them. There's levels, there's societies that you come up in Blackfoot tradition, that in order to graduate to the next level of society, you have to have been in a society before that. And because he was taken for 10 years through no fault of his own, he could not then go into the societies at the age that he was at now. And so it became this thing of re-victimization, unintentionally, but nevertheless, in re-victimization by his own people, because they were operating forcibly, but they were operating in that colonizer mindset. The fact that they took their children at all was because it was at gunpoint. It was at threat of life, at threat of jail, at threat of losing your home, everything taken from you. So, yeah. So they became assimilated in ways, and then not in ways, because they never stopped. One of the reasons why I appreciate and trust the teachings I get in Blackfoot country is because they never stopped practicing their ways. They were forced, as part of the residential school system, the parents that were left behind were forced to join the churches, forced to become deacons and workers in the church. So by day they would do that, and at night they would do their ceremonies and practice their language. And so they were never moved from their land. So that the continuity of what they know, I feel like, is more intact than some other, especially here on the East Coast. We're so assimilated because the waves of new people over and over again hitting the eastern shoreline just kept bombarding the native people. So when I speak of Leonard, I'm speaking of a person who has been one of the most genuine embodiments of the ideals of what it is to be native. So when I found out that he was suffering because his son was attacked and shot in the head, but he survived. But he needed such intensive hospitalization. He was in the hospital for more than a year, just having them work through where his capacity was, where he'd be, that Leonard and his wife spent all of their savings, all of their everything. They're in their 70s, taking care of him, going back and forth. The hospital was 2.5 hours away, going back and forth every single day, because they had to go pray for him every single day. They had to be with him every single day. And it took a toll, because later on, and I'm not telling these stories may sound very personal, but Leonard told them publicly himself. So I know that it's okay to share this, that about 8 months into Jesse being shot, Leonard's brother died. And Leonard's brother was the one who built the arbor for him, kept it up, because Leonard had had 4 heart attacks by this point himself. So his brother took on all of that labor and responsibility for him to make sure the arbor was ready and prepared for that Sundance. Because their mother, Grandma Rosie, said, as long as you can do that Sundance, keep doing it. And long as you can invite people to come and be a part of it, who are good hearts and want to do it. And so when Leonard's brother died, that was a huge blow. And then a month later, Leonard's wife died. And she was everything. She was the homestead. She was where we came to be a part of this dance. She was where we slept and ate, and where we women sat and learned the woman's perspective of how to be in this place and space and the farm. And she was one of the women in the women's secret society. She was a medicine bundle holder. She was the dearest, sweetest, lovingest person. And it was just all too much. All of this in a year's time for Leonard. So now he's alone. He has a son he's not a vegetable, but because his brain works fine and his body is fine, but the connection from his brain to body has been severed. So he cannot operate his body. So this is the state in which he had to bring Jesse home. And so they've been trying to build onto the house to have something that's medically appropriate for Jesse, but there have been roadblocks every step of the way. And the chief and council have not been supportive at all. This full-blood elder living on the reservation, no help from their chief and council because of colonization, because of corruption, because of brokenness in these human beings. So we who are his Sundance family, his children who dance, who come from all directions, all the points, who fulfill the prophecy that there will be mixed blood people that will come and learn the Blackfoot ways and carry them for them and remember them for those Blackfoot that don't remember it. That's what we do, and that's what he honors, and that's why we honor him, and that's why I'm working, and all my Sundance family is working to support him now, because for decades we have come, and if you came with your socks and shoes on, and that's all you had, to his house and to the community all year long. If anybody's hungry, they walk into his house and take food. No questions asked. They would stock their freezers and keep them stocked for people that showed up throughout the year and were hungry to just take. And for them to now be flat broke and in mourning and suffering, Leonard, yes, his family, but Leonard, because of all of these losses, is just, my spirit will not let me not do something. It's like a drowning person. You don't watch someone drown. And so we're coming together. I said this was going to be short and it got long, I'm sorry. But we're coming together to make a web page for Leonard, and we're doing some raffles and things like that to really support him being able to put this addition onto his house, because also COVID has quadrupled the price of everything. Lumber is 4 times what it cost before. Every supply that he needs is 4 times what it was not even 2 years ago. He has the labor because he was a contractor. He has the people to do the work, but he cannot afford the materials, and he needs the support for the chief and council to even allow him to break ground, because they have their reasons that they don't want to support him, and I don't want to speak on that, but we don't care. We care that Leonard continue in good health and doing what he's doing. So there are links to Leonard's web page, which is not complete, but it's up and running as minimally, but we'll have more on there. He has a Patreon page where he gives teachings. He tells his songs, sings his songs, tells stories. And there you can actually donate. You don't have to become a patron. In fact, we're thinking about changing that, but you can definitely give a donation if you want to, and find out who he is. And then we'll have a raffle page too, which will be listed on the website. So I don't want to keep going on, but thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me share. And Omitaku.
Tamara is asking about more information about the residential schools. And I don't know if the question is specifically in relation to Leonard or more in general.
I know the both. Yo sé que las dos, Nicole y Rosa, pueden contestar.
I know that Nicole and Rosa can talk about this residential school.
Oh, she says in general.
So if the question is, so in the 1800s, I think this is what she's asking. I hope I'm right. There was this push to make Native people white, basically, to assimilate them into white culture. And so they came up with this idea of residential schools where they would take the children and send them off to schools and cut their hair and forbid them to speak their language and to teach them English and to dress them as English and to, in every way they could think of, remove them from their culture so that they could become good little white kids. And there was a motto that came from actually the Carlisle Indian School in the United States. That was the first school. It was a military operation that is kill the Indian to save the man. And that's systematically trying to kill everything in the child that was native except for their blood, is one of the other lines. I know this because my husband's grandmother was born at the Carlisle Indian School. And understand what I'm saying. She was born at the Carlisle Indian School. That means her mother was a inmate of the school who was then violated. So that's the history of the residential schools. They were breeding grounds for abuse, murder, neglect, torture, experimentation. All of my elders in Blackfoot country are living residential school inmates. And they tell stories of being experimented on, medically experimented on. All of them, and Leonard tells the same story. If you go and listen to his, and they'll be on the website soon, he tells the story. He tells the story of what happened to him in residential school for 10 years. And he tells it even though it's kind of also a kind of a, Native people and the elders especially don't like to air that stuff, but he knows that it's necessary. He knows that people need to know what happened. And just like we're here now and hearing and being shocked by all of these children being found in graves, all across North South America, North and Canada and all of that, we're not shocked. We knew. So residential schools are a abomination, a sin, a horror, and near apocalypse on Native community. And they in the States, they ended in 1935, I think. They started in the 1800s and ended were outlawed in 1935. In Canada, they went on to the 1980s. They were still putting children in residential schools. So it's a down note, but it's an important thing we have to know, because we have to remember that that's not okay and that's not how we want to be. I hope that answers the question.
Gracias. Thank you. Rosa, do you want to expand? ¿Quieres
No, I'll just add the last school closed in Canada in 1997. So there's a big push to think of this as history and something that happened in the past, but it's very much in the present now. And a lot of residential school survivors are, telling their stories through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in Canada. That's issued like a detailed report with 94 calls to action for truth and reconciliation. But there's also a lot of litigation that the government of Canada is still fighting Indigenous people here. So it's, there's a lot of lip service about, yes, this was a terrible thing, but there's not a lot of actual change that's happening to arrive at reconciliation.
Ulum, I have a question from Chief Spring Buffalo to the panel. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. It's, why is our woman not respected as the true leaders of our Indigenous people? Does anyone want to field that question?
I can take the question. Yeah. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me? Is that, se fue el eco? Gracias. Creo que parte de la colonización fue que la mayoría de las personas que vinieron.
I think that the majority of the colonization, when they came, they were men. I know that in Guatemala, many of them were men. I know that before they came, they were given the option to either go to prison or navigate, right? So that's what they chose. Christopher Columbus, he thought he was going to India. So you know the story. So the majority of those men that came with him were in prison for either because they were stealing or they were violating women before. So basically, when they came in, they killed women and kids first, so there were no more descendants in the tribe. I don't know if you heard the first part of the series. yesterday that the chief Black Eagle, he explained that before the women, the grandmothers, were the ones that were the leaders, and they were the ones that maintained that supported the system, because the grandmothers were the ones that knew the ways. And then now we are in a patriarchal system, heterosexual. We had a lot of people from different colors, like the rainbow colors. And many of them, we thought that they were magical people, they have different powers and, you know, different orientation and stuff. But now we are backwards. We are in a patriarchal system that doesn't respect women. There's a lot of demands for the same system continues, where is violating women's rights and forcing them. That system continues. The colonization with the patriarchal system has subsided into working with this. Is there more questions?
Sí. ¿Me escuchan? Ok, tengo una...
I have a question. And I know that Chinese also have their calendar. What can you guys tell me about that? About the Chinese calendar? There's an echo. I cannot hear it. I can. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Gloria's gonna start again. She's gonna start again. As our ancestors were saying, if we don't follow our ancestors' parents, our ancestors' information, for instance, if we don't follow that, then we're not gonna be in a good place. For instance, that calendar is completely wrong, because even the week that the woman is left out without her period is wrong. For instance, Monday is not supposed to be Monday. Within the planetarians, they didn't follow the planetarian, the planetarian. For instance, Tuesday would be Friday or Thursday, according to Jupiter. Because it goes by turns: Jupiter, Venus, you know, then after Tuesday, it should be Thursday with Jupiter. Then that would be the last day, Thursday. I'm sorry to cut, but it's now, we thought of time is 3:30. But we're gonna continue the presentation. There's 3 more parts of this series that we can continue talking and conversing. Jocelyn?
De taller y voy a poner algunos enlaces.
It froze. Gracias por sus. Rosa, thank you for your training. It was heartfelt. I don't know how to say it in Spanish. Then don't forget to record the chat. The chat can be recorded. If you go to the 3 dots, you can put record the chat. And you can have it there. And you could see the map, the websites of also of the presenters as well. Thank you for being here, and I will see you again on the next 3 parts of this series. Thank you.